Well, welcome back, everybody, to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so thankful to be with you today, to be able to be a part of this amazing podcast that we've just been so grateful for all of you who have listened, who have shared, who have reached out. And speaking of reaching out, why don't you reach out, leave us a review. If you are not listening on Apple or you're not watching on YouTube, just reach out to us. Email us, either Shannick or Corey at hillcity.tv.
Do it.
Honestly, we just really like the encouragement.
We do.
We're words of affirmation guys, and we just love hearing from you. And speaking of hearing from you, we heard from a lot of you last month going through that series, answering the question, what is the devil? That was fun. It was spicy. But thank you for all of you who listened, shared it. Honestly,
so much more.
I want to say thank you, but I've gotten quite a few emails that I've had to respond to over the last few weeks, just questions that people bring up. And it's good, and I love being a part of it, but it actually takes a lot of time to do that as well. So hopefully you appreciate how much time we're taking on this. But also I want to say big shout out for those of you joining us on YouTube. Thank you for watching us. And if you're watching on GAN, what's up? We're so excited to have you join us in this conversation. And really, we want you to know that we're just two dudes trying to just follow Jesus, figure stuff out. And this is an outlet for us to just have conversation on what's happening in our life. In and around just this place that we call home and that we work for, Hill City. But really, we're having a blast, and we're just having fun doing it. So thank you for joining us. Lastly, before I throw it over to Corey, as you can probably already tell, I've had some major allergy stuff
you sound awful.
happening over the last few days. Matter of fact, I woke up this morning without a voice, and so we postponed recording to the afternoon today just because I'm trying to get my voice back, but it's not quite there yet. So bear with us, bear with me. But in this episode, Corey's going to take most of it. I'll put my mic on mute.
Out of control. You are out of control. Question of the week.
Let's do it.
So I was talking with Tania and Britt and Harrison before we
Hold on. You're gonna try to stump me or something again, aren't you?
Yeah, try to. They were
last week. Still is blowing my mind.
Isn't it blown? Yeah. You know what Tania just told me?
13,000 miles.
You know what she just told me?
China. Crazy.
What did you just say in English? What did you just say?
I said 13,000 miles for the Wall of China.
Oh.
It just came out squeaky.
Yeah. Anyways, Tania just told me about this controversy around the Great Wall of China and that the wall is built to keep China out, not people out from China. She goes, you can go look at the conspiracy videos on this where,
I don't even understand.
I don't even
trying to say. What does that even mean?
You just have to go look it up. Apparently, it wasn't China who built this Great Wall of China.
It was the Mongolians?
It was somebody
else.
Wasn't
that who was? And
who knows? I know nothing about this.
I don't know either. I'm probably,
someone's going to comment and be like, you guys are so unintelligent on this specific topic. Yeah, I don't know. Literally 10 minutes ago, right before this recording, she's like, hey, did you know? I'm like, no, I did not know. So I got to have to look into that.
Everybody and their conspiracy theories.
Speaking of conspiracy theories, they got me on one. Okay, you ready? As my mic is falling. What island is the Statue of Liberty on?
What island?
Yeah. Thanks, France.
Yeah. Well, France donated the Statue of Liberty, right?
Right. But what island is it on?
I feel like you're wanting to stump me, so I'm not going to say Ellis Island, because that's where people came in and signed the registry when they came into the country, not where the Statue of Liberty is. But I could be totally wrong with that, so I don't even know. So I'll say Ellis Island.
Yeah, everybody says Ellis Island, but that's not true. It's Liberty Island.
Oh.
Which I didn't know. So I was like, oh, okay. If I didn't know that, I'm sure Shannick doesn't know
I
that.
wanted to say Ellis Island, but I was like, okay, you're trying to stump me, so it's got to be something else. So.
There's another little fact for y'all. Just
Liberty Island.
Anyways, we've been talking about flowing. And I preached a sermon this past week, right after Easter, that it kind of stemmed from a conversation that you and I had in our office. So we figured we were just going to record this like you were experiencing the behind-the-scenes conversation in our office. And my goal for the sermon was I had 3 ideas of we as humans are never more like God than when we are doing these 3 things. And you came up with a 4th thing. And we wrapped our brain around so many more conversations. Okay, is there another word or another attribute to describe humans when we're living like God, like exactly like God?
Right.
And
well, hold on. Let me pause right here. I want you to know, as we're having this conversation, we're not trying to say we are God in this. And I want to make that clear, because some people make that distinction, or they don't make that distinction clear. But also, we are supposed to live in this world like God. Matter of fact, First Timothy tells us that in this world we are as, Jesus is. And so we're supposed to be Jesus and be like God in this world. And so, sorry, continue.
You have no idea what I was saying. You just cut me right off, jerk.
Yeah. We were in the office having the conversation. We came up with these 3 things. I help you add to the 4th one. And
Okay, yeah.
The conversation continued.
But it was like we came up with other words, but they would fit under these 4 specific things. So we just got to talking about flow. We're in the sermon series in Hill City called No Hustle, All Flow. And what we mean by that from a place of spirituality, like there should be no striving in your life and relationship with God. There should be no striving or hustling or hunger and thirsting, which I'm going to talk about week 3. But it should just be a natural flow, right? His yoke is easy and his burden is light, or
right.
as the Message version says, living lightly and freely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like religion's only message really is do more, try harder. But the true gospel message is do less, love harder.
Right.
And we are so, as a society, I think what I'm finding, especially in ministry, is we are very unsatisfied with love like Jesus. So many conversations, people are like, I want more knowledge. I want more revelation. I want more. I want to just sit in this knowledge or wisdom. And it's like, man, I don't think you need to learn anything more than what you already know. It really is the simplicity of the gospel is just love like Jesus. Know you're loved by God unconditionally, and then give that unconditional love to other people. It is really that simple. I don't know why I'm going to speak for myself. I was very unsatisfied with that. And that journey started in 2018. I think you remember we were at our city campus and we were having this moment in the middle of the summer. And I was just so unsatisfied with love like Jesus, this message that we now really teach and focus on. And it took me probably 5 years to get to a place where I was satisfied with that's it. So I've got a lot of grace for people.
Yeah. But I will say you are a teacher though at heart. And so you do want to sit and learn and study and give me knowledge and that. But for me personally, it's why I was so frustrated with the church. It's why I'm so frustrated with sometimes the system of just people coming in on Sundays to be encouraged by the word, to learn, to study, to grow. And then it's like, we do this for a reason so that we can go out and be empowered and live it out Monday through Saturday. We do this and walk through different scriptures and stories to empower you to go out and love like Jesus. Like that is the end goal of why we gather, why we do what we do, because we want to get people to a place to understand how loved they are so that they can go love others like Jesus loved us.
Yeah. So do you want to give them the 4 things right up front, or do we want to close that way?
Oh,
because I didn't really have a plan.
Yeah, let's wait.
Okay. Well, so I was unpacking several verses. One, people are always like, well, grace, which is my favorite thing to talk about. I don't think there's anything else really to talk about, is God's grace for you, so be gracious towards other people. But Titus 2 tells us whenever someone's like, oh, grace is just greasy, or you're giving people license to sin. According to Titus 2, it says this: for the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people, which is very controversial in and of itself if you would take a minute to just pause and listen to what that verse just said. Then verse 12, it says, grace is what teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled and upright and godly lives in this present age. And so grace is actually everything we need to live righteous, because again, you're not striving for righteousness. It's been given to you freely from Jesus. It's a gift. So just acknowledge it, receive it. Because if you don't acknowledge it or receive it, it won't matter in your life, because you won't understand that you are righteous outside of your belief and outside of your performance, which is so important for people to really grasp that understanding. And then if you skip down to verse 14, he said, Jesus, who gave himself to redeem us from all wickedness. That redeem is in past tense. It happened 2,000 years ago. You've already been redeemed. And then the next sentence, and to purify us for himself, a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good. That purification happened 2,000 years ago. You're already pure.
I love that you focus on this past week, because if you think about it, when people are approached with maybe the question of salvation, or what you just said, purification or righteousness or being justified or sanctified, all of these things, if their response is, well, I know I'm that because and then they followed out. I said a prayer. I made a confession of faith. I walked an aisle. I did it. If you start because and the word is then you missed what Jesus did. The word, the reason that we are all of those things, because Jesus. Yeah. Not because Yeah. So those things are already true about us based on what he did. And so we just, again, wake up to it, believe it, so that we can begin to walk it out and activate it in our life. But us believing it didn't make it true. It was already true. And then we believe and then activate that belief by faith and begin to walk it out, what it means to be a son, daughter, to be grace-filled, to be righteous, to be holy, to be purified, what you just mentioned. And so, yeah, I think it's just amazing.
I almost said something super controversial in response to that, but I don't know if we're ready for that.
No, it's okay. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just up. No,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's just like, so I've had this conversation with a couple of people, especially from the conversation of who's the devil and salvation, which we unpacked, I think, on episode 11. Like, what is salvation? It means wholeness and completion. Yeah. So it's like, salvation isn't about getting to heaven, although that is a byproduct. Yeah. Salvation is something you experience here, and it's not because you said a prayer.
Yeah.
Because if salvation doesn't happen until you say a prayer, then Jesus is not the Savior of the world, because your ability to pray the right prayer is what saves you. So then you're the Savior.
That exact. If I said it wrong, I apologize. That's exactly what I was trying to say.
Exactly, but that I was just putting it out there. Exactly, yeah. And
that's exactly what I was trying to say.
That's the conversation I've had with people, and then when they think about it that critically, they're like, "Oh wait, yeah." So yes, I'm not saying that belief is not important, but again, what you just said, belief does not make it true. It makes it true to you. It's always been true because of what Jesus did. And this message does not make it, people are like, oh, that will produce pride. No. It actually produces the opposite of pride, because I'm not relying on my ability to believe and my ability to perform and behave. I'm relying on Jesus's.
Yep. No, it's so good. But I want to backtrack since you just threw that out.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that verse, Titus 2, where it says that Jesus appeared and offered salvation to all people. And you think that, all people, it's controversial. I would say most people that think they have to believe first for that to become true would also use that verse because of how it's put in English. Because it says, he appeared and offers salvation to all people. Every single person in the church would believe that to be true, that he offers salvation to all people, but it's up to a person to believe until it's true about them. But the problem is they don't go even further, and I think it's still in, not in Titus, but in Timothy, where it's mentioned, and Jesus is the Savior of all people, especially those who believe.
Right.
That's controversial. This one isn't so much because it said he offers. So that means, okay, if he's going to offer it, yes, he offers it to every single person, but everyone would say, it's up to a person's belief for that to become true about them.
What's crazy is I just looked this up because it triggered it. That word offer in the Greek is not there.
What does it say in the Greek? No, how does it read?
I'm going to show you. Has appeared for the grace of God, bringing salvation to all men.
You just got like such good news right there.
We did that with you though,
and that was
you
so
were listening
good.
as we
that
were
was
learning.
Improv in the moment. We weren't planning on that. It doesn't say offers.
So the Bible clearly says.
Pull that up again. Hold on.
I just deleted it.
Okay, never mind.
Well, hold on.
Forget
History, Titus 2, Greek analysis.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. Bringing salvation to all men.
Yeah, Jesus did
bringing salvation to all men. Like not offering it to everybody. No,
and
he
that's
brought
the Greek words soterion.
It's
saving.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well that was amazing. I'm actually even more encouraged.
Holy crap.
After we started this podcast.
The Greek word literally means applied salvation.
It's applied.
Applied salvation. Emphasizing the direct application of God's salvation. Okay. Mind blown. Next. What are we even talking about? Oh,
we're talking about in the flow where it's not this religious, rigid system that is all about hustle and work and overworking. And now, again, I loved how you also brought about in the message, like it's not saying don't have some hustle to your life as far as like start that business. You're going to have to work
it's just from
50, 60, 70 hours. You're going to have to hustle and grind and do all this stuff. We're talking about a spiritual aspect and an emphasis on our relationship with God. There should be no hustle, but all flow, meaning from a place of rest.
Yeah.
Knowing what he's already done, the work in salvation and all of that things to already be true about us isn't a work. It's already been done. And we just have to awaken to what's been done.
Yeah.
That's the work.
And I told this story, which I've told this story before during the sermon, but I changed it up. Did you notice the change of the prostitute story?
Yes.
And I like it so much better. So I've told this story on this podcast before, but I'm going to change it up. Let's say, and this is what we mean by this. Let's say there's a woman and she's a prostitute, young woman, 18, 19-year-old prostitute in the town doing her thing. She charges $1,000 a day, right? And the king's walking on horseback. Now, so he's riding on horseback back to his palace, and he catches this beautiful young girl's eye, and asks his servants to go bring that girl to the palace. So she comes to the palace thinking that she's going to be performing her prostitute duties, right? She gets into the presence of the king, and the king says, "How much is your daily charge?" And she says, $1,000 a day. He goes, "That's it." He goes, "You might be thinking that I called you here to perform prostitution with me, the king. But I actually came here to redeem your story, or brought you here to redeem your story. In fact, I want to adopt you. I want to make you my daughter." She's floored, right? But by definition, her title now goes from prostitute to princess. We might do a sermon series called Prostitution to Princess, or another clever way to say it. Was that her doing? No, it was the king's doing. And then I shared this idea, and this is what grace is. When people hear grace and they're like, "Oh man, I can go and do whatever I want." The answer to that is yes and no. The answer is yes, you can, because God's love is unconditional, which means you can go and do whatever you want. My response in the no is, well, why would you want to when you already know who you are? Or do you know who you are? And then I shared like that newly found princess, she might wake up in the palace and go back to the town square and live like a prostitute. It might take her a day. It might take her a week. It might take her a month. It might take her years. And this is a story of us. Depending on our own trauma and ego and lived experiences, it might take us a while, but eventually, when we're told over and over again who we are, our new identity as royalty ultimately, eventually that little princess is going to wake up in the palace and say, "Why do I keep living like a prostitute when everything the king has is now mine?" And that's the gospel message. Why would you want what the world offers when royalty is already in you, when that's who you are? Your title wasn't changed when you believe. Your title was changed when God adopted all humanity, which happened years ago. And so wake up to your identity. You've always been princes. You've always been princesses. Live like one. Yep. And not in an arrogant way, not in a who's here to serve me, but who am I to serve you? Because that's what the king did.
Yeah,
that's what Jesus did.
That's what we mean by flow. It's flow, not forced.
It's flow, not forced. And then I unpacked Ephesians 5. And I'm going to unpack it right here, and then we're going to give you these 4 things because we've been talking for 17 minutes. Ephesians 5, 15 and 20. In the English, it's you need to go look in the Greek to define these words. It says, here's the challenge, now that you're in grace. It says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. In other words, be consistent with your lifestyle. Verse 16, making the most of every opportunity. That Greek phrase literally means to redeem the time, which is all of anybody listening to my voice right now. Your calling in life is to redeem the time. Well, how? Because the days are evil. That word evil there isn't your typical word for evil. It literally means pain-ridden. So you could rewrite that sentence by saying, redeeming the time because the days are pain-ridden. In other words, how you experience your pain, you're not exempt from pain just because you follow Jesus, but how you redeem that painful experience matters, and I think that you get that from Jesus. Therefore, do not be foolish or live thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not, and then he uses this illustration on wine. This has nothing to do with don't be drunk, even though, you shouldn't be drunk. Like, what need are you avoiding?
What are you trying to escape from?
What are you trying to escape that you need alcohol? My computer just crashed.
Oh, here we go.
You ready to take it? Do you have it? Oh. Therefore, do not be foolish or live thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. Well, think about it. What happens when you get drunk? You see different, you think different, you talk different, you walk different, and you act different. Those things should all be applied to you when you understand who you are in the Spirit. So it's a beautiful little tie-in. And then he says, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Now, I had to look this up in the Greek because that sounds lame. It is wild what those words actually mean in the Greek. That
was one of my favorite parts of what you just said in the sermon this past week when you were unpacking these 3 things.
So speaking to one another in psalms and hymns, literally in the Greek, those are songs and hymns of 2 things, honor and celebration. And then the songs from the Spirit, that word in the Greek literally means always, either something that's spontaneous or impromptu. Yep. So you could rewrite that sentence to say, okay, you're speaking to one another always in honor and celebration in a spontaneous and impromptu way, which means there's no pressure.
Planned out.
This is not planned out.
It's in the flow.
When you know who you are, living in the flow, every person you meet, you should speak to them with honor, because honor speaks more about you than it does about who they are. So you can honor them even in their sin. And it's always about celebration, a heart of celebration. Are you celebrating people well? Do people want to be in your presence because you honor and celebrate them well?
Yep.
Because you know that their successes don't diminish yours, and you're not insecure about other people succeeding. whatever that looks like.
Right. Well, I'm going to chime in here, and I was maybe going to hold off on telling this story here today, but I'll go ahead and share it. And you'll hear it again, actually, if you listen to my sermon on the last Sunday of the month, because I'm going to include it there too. But you're talking about this and redeeming the time and speaking to people, in an honoring way, but also in this impromptu way, because you're just flowing by the Spirit. You really don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to tell you a story. We're really involved in the community now through this re-initiative. And we were down at one of our houses on Crystal Avenue working. And our neighbor, when I'm there for the first weekend, I waved to her. She waves to me, go over. And because for me, just my personality, someone waves back to me, I'm like, okay, that's an open door. I can have a conversation with them now.
Don't wave to Shannick if you don't want to have a conversation.
But it was great. After talking with her 3 or 4 minutes, telling her what we're doing, she was welcoming us to the neighborhood. Well, then she's like, hey, can you come inside for a little bit? I'm like, sure, let's go. This is just an older lady, lived in the community for a long time. She lives there at the home with her sister, and she wanted to talk to me about the house and what she's doing, the work that she needs done too. And I was telling her I'm not a contractor or anything like that, but we'll see what we can do. But I walked through her house, and the one thing I knew we could help with was she had this stove. The stove worked, the oven didn't. So she had like some crock pots that she would have to use as an oven and bake stuff in crock pots because her oven didn't work. I'm like, I surely can I can't help with the other stuff, but let's try to do this. So about a week goes by, I'm looking, couldn't find one, thought I had one tracked down to someone to donate. It didn't end up working out. So I was like, I'm just going to go buy her one. So I went to Home Depot, walked through the scratch and dent section, trying to find a new one. It wasn't like very much money to even buy a new one. So I'm like, I think I'm going to pull the trigger, but let me think about it. So I'm walking away from there. I ended up meeting this dude. His name's Michael. And he visited our church. He's brothers of one of our elders, Chris, here. He happened to come on that Sunday before, and he was just talking to me about how much he loved the sermon, loved our church, loved the message, and he is all about reaching out, being in the community. He loves what we're doing with the Re-Initiative. And I'm like, we have this half-hour conversation, but I ended by saying, man, I love having this conversation, and yeah, we're all about community. Matter of fact, I'm just leaving. I only came back here to this section because I was looking for a stove or a range for one of our neighbors. It went out. They've been without this oven for over 6 months too. He's like, you need a range? I'm like, yeah. He goes, what the heck? He goes, I just cleaned out someone's house yesterday and I have one. It's just sitting. I've been thinking about who am I going to donate to and give it to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, only God can orchestrate stuff like this. It was insane. It was wild. Went and picked up the oven, got it over there. Me and Chris put it in, installed it. But in that moment, I was just able to speak just prophetically, and hey, this isn't just some gift from 2 white dudes. Like, this is God seeing the need that you had, and he wanted to come through with this need. So don't you can thank us, but really thank God. Why don't you spend some time just later on? Why don't you pray? Why don't you just celebrate because he still sees you as his beloved daughter. And I had a chance in the moment, impromptu, that's why I'm telling the story, to just encourage someone just because I live my life in the flow and I'm open to those type of experiences. And I don't have to plan it. They just happen. And that's only one of about, I would say since we started this initiative, hundreds. I won't say 100.
Thousands.
One of about
millions.
40 plus stories
bazillions.
That I could tell you what happens when you just begin to live your life in the flow.
Yeah. And it takes this pressure off. Like, I blame the church for the pressure that people feel around evangelism. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry if that's been taught to you. Evangelism is not this pressure, you got to go out and save people because then you're the savior again. No, it's recognizing the power you have, recognizing honor and celebration in other people, and just living in that flow, which is always going to be spontaneous. And that verse closes, sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. In other words, your life should be a dance party, literally and figuratively. Yep. Your life should just be a dance party.
I will say I've never had more fun than what I'm doing now. And
you're evangelizing way more without using that garbage language that is just so forced and not helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then verse 20, always giving thanks to God the Father for everything in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Exactly how you finish that. So, hey, what are the 4 ways to live like God always? 4 ways to live in the flow.
Yeah. And I'm going to reiterate this again because it came to me when I was thinking about earlier when I mentioned how in this world we are as Jesus is. 1 John 2:6. It says, anyone who claims to live in him must live as Jesus lived. And so we think that this is the way that Jesus lives. We think this is the way and the attributes that God has. And so we want to be like him in these 4 areas.
And these are, in my opinion, I would love your comments on this, whether on YouTube or Facebook or email or text. Is there another one that you could add to this? Because 5 would be the perfect number, 5 being the number of grace, just to get Bible nerd on you. But make sure that that word doesn't fit under these 4, because we've spent so much time, we're like, oh, love is in there, but love is included in all these. But these are the 4 ways that you're never more like God, 4 ways to live in the flow. Number 1, creating. Number 2, giving. Number 3, restoring. Number 4, sustaining. So like creating, you're never more like God than when you're creating. He spoke the world into creation. He's always been creating. What do you need to be creating right now? And it can be tangible. It can be something that you're just passionate about. Like someone listening right here has an idea, and you've been living in fear about the what ifs and the risks. And I believe that this is God telling you right now, get going on that creation, because the world needs what you have to offer, whether that be a book, a song, or a company, or I don't know, you name something.
Well, I'm glad you just said that, because I also want to take any pressure off. It could be something like a company, a song, a book, all those other things, but those might be like daunting tasks. I would say simplify it and start there. When you're creating something, it could be, hey, I need to create an avenue for the neighbors just to get to know each other. So once a year, I'm going to have a barbecue, and I'm going to go around and invite the neighbors over. And you're creating that thing for connection to happen so that you can get to know your neighbors, so that you can love your neighbors. Why don't you start there? I think a lot of times when we think about this creating world, everybody gets so bogged down and like almost anxious feeling, because it's like, oh, I got to have this dream and this creating thing that's like, oh, starting a business? Are you kidding me? You know how much work is involved with that? It's a ton. And a lot of you do have businesses you need to create. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is start somewhere. Start small. Start
creating
with, like
a new habit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Creating a new habit.
Number 2, giving. You're never more like Jesus than when you're giving. He gave himself for all of us. What do you need to be giving to? And this is not just a money conversation. This is time and talents. So what do you have passions about? And are you giving of yourself? Or maybe you're in a season where you are literally giving to your family, and you just haven't connected the dots that you've been giving this whole time. So maybe recognize that all your sacrifice of doing what you want to do is because you're raising kids, or you're in a season of just sacrifice towards your kids, and just look at it as giving. And
I would say too that it doesn't have to be even something that you're passionate about. Because in this idea of giving, sometimes the most sacrificial form of giving that's done in love is giving of your time, or doing something that you might not be passionate, you might not want to do, but something needs done, and workers need to be there to be able to get the thing done. And whether it's serving, volunteering, giving in some type of way is incredible.
Number 3 is restoring. This is one of the things that I think is incredible. What do you need to restore, whether it be a project or a person? And it's not you doing the restoring, it's reminding that Christ already restored them. So take that pressure off.
And I would say this is exactly where your ZLD program falls under, because you want to restore mindsets. You want to restore people back to healthy positions holistically and fully. And so that's part of that restoring aspect. But everybody that listens to this podcast, you have somebody that you can speak encouragement into that could help them on their journey of restoration.
Totally. And last but not least, which in my opinion, we talked about this for an hour, this is probably where most of us spend most of our time. Last one is sustaining, because everything that God does is about sustaining. You have dominion, you have responsibility, and sustaining is not always celebrating. It's not always doing those first 3 that are fun: creating, giving, restoring. Sustaining is often mundane, and it's not sexy, so which is why many people don't like to sustain.
It often looks like maintenance.
It also, it often looks like maintenance.
In everything, especially, you become homeowners or car owners or anything, you know about maintenance. It never ends. It never stops. But there is a part of sustaining that I think we are like God when we sustain, because he builds things and he works through different avenues where the thing that he's created, he built systems to be able to sustain it. You know what I mean? And so
his death, burial, and resurrection has been sustaining you your whole life. You just might not be knowing it.
Hey, there
that
we
wasn't
go.
Proper English, but you get what I'm saying.
I like it.
So like we gave the example during the sermon is this re-initiative, which we are I just got a text right before we got in here, all ready for the second house. All of the gifts were taken for the wish list, which if you haven't paid attention to that, or you want to give towards that financially, we have so many people that aren't a part of our church that are giving specifically to the re-initiative, because 100% of your gift is going to these single moms and restoring, creating, giving, and restoring all those things. But those are the fun things. Like we created this initiative. People gave their time, money, talents, and treasure to it to be able to sustain it. And people have been a part of that restoration process. But now we're in already, since we have 2, we're in the sustaining of those two, and we have people involved on the board, and a mother that's dealing.
The grass needs cut at these houses every single week. There's mentors that have been set up that have weekly check-in with these ladies. It's like now we got home maintenance to take care of when things go wrong. Like all that stuff isn't sexy, but it's probably the most thing that's needed.
Yeah.
You know, in this ministry, all these systems and things for sustainability.
Because we can get excited, and by the time you're listening to this, depending on when you're listening to this, we might have 3, 4, 5, we might have 20, we might have 30 houses, and people get really excited about, hey, we have another house, create, give, restore. But when we're on house 50, there's 49 other houses that are being sustained and needing sustaining. And so don't look at your life if you're in a mundane season. Maybe just a 2 millimeter shift is all that needs to happen for you to look at what you're giving, and maybe you just need to celebrate the sustaining because it often is mundane. That rhymed. We'll end with that.
I like it.
So you're never more like God, and you're always living in the flow when you are creating, giving, restoring, sustaining. If you got another one, let us know in the comments. But
make sure it doesn't fall under one of those 4.
Yeah. Don't be like, oh, this is the idea, and then I'll respond immediately. Yeah, that fits under this. Anyways, if this was a thought-provoking episode, why don't you send it to somebody? If you're excited to be a part of what we're excited to be a part of in this reinitiative in church, man, I've never been more excited to be a pastor at Hill City, even with the counseling. Like what's been going on behind the scenes. We're trying to keep up with this momentum and creating systems and whatnot in the sustaining of what has already been created, give to, and restored. And I'm just really excited about what is going to be happening over these next specific couple months and years to come. So
it's going to be amazing. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. But until next week, just know you're loved and there's nothing you can do about it.